Okay, we're going to look at the performance and optimization side of things. So there are a few features that can be a little costly. So we come to the Vault component and we've gone over the anti-cheat. We know it's decently costly if you abuse it. But let's have a look at these other features. So auto-release Vault input always is a good option. On success, not that great. So if I go never, and by now I'm sure you know the stat VaultIt command, as I've used it several times throughout the previous tutorials. I'm certain you've all done. So I'm just going to hold down V and look at that build up. It's got a bit of cost associated with it to constantly compute vaulting, because that's what it does when you're holding down the key, right? So by using auto release input set to always, we're mitigating the constant checks. But on the plus side, it only happens for the local player. It doesn't happen on the server. So now jump key priority. We could have looked at that before, but yeah, what's it matter? So if I just hit, well, jump, it's not going to do anything, but if there's something in front of me, is that predict capsule path. It's not terribly expensive, but add that with compute vault, and that is a slightly more expensive computation than just pressing the V key. Again, that's on the local player, so it's not a big deal. There are other settings. Always vault if possible. Only vault from error is a really good option if you want to save on some bandwidth. Well, CPU bandwidth, not net bandwidth, just to be clear, because it'll do a jump and then you can hit it again to vault, which is actually feels really nice and fluid. And then it will never vault if the player intended to jump. It will always jump and then vault if you press it again. And of course, you still have the separate vault key. So that option avoids doing anything potentially more that uses more resources. Forgetting my words. So we're not too fussed about these because they're local only. But let's have a look at auto vault. So when we're walking or falling or swimming, not that we can on this map. Now I'm just going to hit play. Now have a look. Auto vault is just constantly computing, always, all the time. 0.02 ms doesn't cost a lot, but well, it goes up to 0.03 sometimes. But now you add that for every single AI, because auto vault is required for AI to vault. You could build custom logic that detects when there's something for them to vault onto. Well, that's effectively what auto vault's doing, but I mean, you could do a check to see if it even needs to have a look or something. Maybe you can come up with something more performant that suits your particular game, because this solution just works for everything. So when you have a lot of AI, the auto vault can add up, but there is one thing you can do to reduce the cost of auto vault. So it's got a check skip of 8. So it will do a check, it'll skip 8 frames and then do another check. So if I set it to 0 and it does it literally on tick, the cost has gone up a little bit, but not drastically. And if it's 8 and you have an AI that says, well, let's pretend there's something we're going to jump and then vault up. If you do that, what might actually happen is that the vault check actually happens between where it would hit. So, you know, you have one frame and it does the check. You pass the obstacle and it does the check. So you have to be careful and balance your use of auto vault check skip. So for the local player, 8 is fine. You're not going to miss much, but on a server running multiple AI with already low frame rate, it might not be a great idea. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is look at level of detail. So if I come into his animation blueprint, all of these control rig nodes set to LOD threshold 2, and that is aggressive. So I know this is a performance and optimization tutorial, but let's see what FBIK costs. Let's just have a gander. Quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's doing 2 hands, so it's basically what you would expect. Yeah, but the thing is, if we open his mesh, we're at LOD 0, 1, 2. So let me just open this up. And now we're at 1, now we're at 2. So in a full screen game, you'd probably actually notice it blend out. But this is 3, and 3 is actually probably a better value. And yeah, that actually raises the cost because they won't blend out until they're farther away. But we don't want visual glitches either. So what works for your game will depend on your game and your characters. Now, if your mesh doesn't have LODs, it's fine because Unreal Engine has some pretty spectacular auto LOD tools. So I'm just going to set this to 1, apply. And now we don't have any levels of detail. So pretend we have morph targets and we turn one on and we make it give us some levels of detail. Okay, it has generated those levels of detail. We're on LOD 0. We're going to come up to 1. Now, if we had morph targets, the morph would have just turned off because levels of detail has a bug in Unreal Engine 4.26. I haven't checked other versions where it doesn't generate LODs for the morph target. So don't worry about LOD 0. Of course, it's got the morphs. We go LOD 1. We click, remap morph targets, and then regenerate level of detail. And you do it for everything except the LOD 0. And now your morph targets will be, well, they'll be back. And even if you use this option when you initially generate them, it doesn't work. Yeah, so that's a weird engine bug that I thought you should know about. Okay, so moving on. So we've set these all to 3, which reduces performance. And let's take the Vault 250 animation. So what can we do here? Well, not a lot, other than the main culprit. So we set these to 3 as well. What's the point in having control rig if we're not computing the IK in the first place, right? So it should be the same. But also, I did go over the settings for update type previously. So you could do a single update and just set it to say right where you think it will get a very good location for the hands to use full body IK from, and just have it do it once instead of on tick. Which brings us to the next option, tick skip amount. You can set this pretty high and probably still get pretty good result. So we also have apply to roles, local player only, simulated only, or all. This is mostly for the first person animations, but I mean, you could turn it off for players who are not you, just so you get that fidelity of full body IK, but not for other players. I mean, you're probably not going to notice it terribly. It's certainly nice to have, but that's a decision you can make based on your needs. And that concludes the performance and optimization tutorial, mostly because I've covered everything in previous tutorials already, so go through the lot and good luck.